Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host and most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, September 29th, 2021, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm host most Will Buchanan. On the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before I do get started, we do try to keep this family friendly. If I can find words, it'd be great today. As I said, we do try to keep this family friendly, and we try to watch our language, but sometimes words do fly, and sometimes things that maybe too intense for young viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Well, there is really no other way to get into this except this is the midweek review, and nothing screams midweek crisis more than when you have a group of Democrats who have still yet to come together and actually try to make things work.
The drama on Capitol Hill tonight, one progressive Democrat is calling out members of her own party. My colleague Manu Raju asked her for her thoughts a short time ago about Senators Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. Here's what she said.
It is saddening to see them use Republican talking points. We obviously didn't envision having Republicans as part of our party, and I hope that they will understand that Democrats need to be united behind the president's agenda, and we need to have urgent conversations on how to get this agenda done.
Do you know where negotiations are right now?
Yeah, we are really getting close. The Senate Majority Leader continues to have a conversation with the few senators that are holding up progress. Our chairwoman, Pramila Jayapal, had a phone call and a conversation with Sinema, and we continue to be closely monitoring the work that the Speaker, the Majority Leader, and the White House is doing in bringing progress on these bills. What we are waiting for is what is it that they are interested in seeing changed.
Yes, Kyrsten Sinema and Doug Manchin. You've probably heard me mention both of them, actually. And I have been saying this. It just seems to be a repeating issue. What I mean by the midweek crisis, as far as the Democrats are going, both their bills, along with the government shutdown, is also in danger. Keep in mind that I've said this before on multiple podcasts between Joe Manchin and now Kyrsten Sinema, who's both senators who are now standing in the way of the Democrats' Keys Party agenda to not only pass the infrastructure bill with a $3.5 trillion price tag, but at the same time getting anything passed in Congress at this point, just because of the holdup. Of course, I have said this before many times on this podcast, Manchin wants to work with Republicans. And Kyrsten Sinema, the other senator that's standing with Joe Manchin, is along repeating the same lines. And I have to give Representative Ilhan Omar very much credit for this. They are doing Republicans. I said they consider themselves moderate Democrats. Every time I hear moderate or centrist Democrats, it's Republican light, because every time they talk, it's Republican policies and talking points. It's too much money. We need to work across the aisle. We need to do this. Those are Republican talking points, and and I still say it's crazy that for a Democrat that they're going against the grain. Almost every other Democrat except two, now it's one, now it's two, are now against what their party's trying to do. I have been saying this since Jump Street. Democrats always have the right idea, But when it comes down to unity, it doesn't. Unity only seems to happen during elections. It doesn't seem to happen when policy hits the road. When rubber hits the road, you never, ever, ever seem to get all Democrats on board unless it's a COVID hate bill. Just saying. I mean, the John Lewis Act, the For the People Act, George Floyd Police Reform Act, and various other bills, not just the infrastructure bill. Keep in mind, they were supposed to go after raising the minimum wage. They were supposed to go after, starting in this Medicare for All thing rolling. They were supposed to go after so many things. Because, again, this is a slim majority that the Democrats have, and the Republicans will not help them at all, which is another thing I'm going to get into very soon, very quickly. Just because, again, Republicans are waiting for the midterms. And again, say what you want about Republicans. Republicans, above all else, will toe the party line. When it comes down to a party vote and they need all Republicans on board, you will very rarely find a time when a Republican went against their own party. Yet in the Democrats, they're all unified and aligned when it comes to election time. But when policy hits the road and when it's time to get some laws passed, again, you're going to have a select few. And I have been saying this for about a while now. Manchin is the Republicans' gift is the gift to Republicans this year, just because he's doing the work for them. Because imagine if Manchin was on board. Imagine, I always say, we like to play imagine. Let's imagine. Imagine if Joe Manchin was really on board. Imagine if all 50 Democrats were on board by now. The word reconciliation would be used quite a lot because again, I don't even say the word reconciliation. I would even sit there and say, I think they would have gotten together and got rid of the filibuster. I think they would have. That's just me. I think they would have got rid of the filibuster if all Democrats were on board. But good old Joe doesn't believe we need to get rid of the filibuster because he fears that would basically be used against him. And I'm just like, it only can be used against you if the people turn around and decide above all else to go Republican. But again, that's not the only problem that Democrats are running into. They're trying to avoid a government shutdown by the end of the week.
Is that Republicans successfully blocked this Democratic effort to tie the government spending plan along with raising the debt limit. Of course, the debt limit is set to reach its peak somewhere in the middle of October, while government funding is scheduled to run out by as soon as the end of this week. The Democrats wanted to tie both of these two critical pieces of legislation together to get it all done in one fell swoop, and to put both Republicans and Democrats on the record in supporting this. But the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said that Republicans were just not going to support raising the debt limit. Now, McConnell, right before this vote, did offer up a different option of a standalone continuing resolution, which would keep the government funding going and keep the government open. But Democrats rejected that. So essentially what we had is what we expected, a party line vote. It would have required 10 Republican votes in order for this piece of legislation to move to the next stage. So the big question now, Wolf, is what do Democrats do now? The timeline is really tight at this point because, as we said, the government could shut down as soon as the end of this week. So they're going to have to come up with a path forward here. And does it mean putting a continuing resolution to the floor that is not connected to the debt ceiling, maybe even for a short period of time, just to get them over this hump so that they continue these negotiations on the debt ceiling? But as we talked about earlier, Wolf, this is all against the backdrop of these much bigger negotiations about these two big spending bills. A lot happening here.
Yes, because Republicans don't care. I have been saying this again. When we found out, which feels like so long ago, we found out in the last election. We found out in the last election that for the simple fact of the matter, Democrats were going to get a slim majority, a slim one, but a majority nonetheless. We knew that was the moment you heard Democrats had a majority in the House, tiebreaker in the Senate, and now the presidency. You knew off the bat the Republicans weren't going to do anything. Because the key Republicans still got their positions. Mitch McConnell was still in, Kevin McCarthy was still in, and pretty much Tim Scott, the only black person in an all-white party, the only raccoon they could seem to get to go with Republicans is still there. Mitch McConnell has done nothing but block. His whole thing as a minority leader is blocking. I'm going to block this. We're going to block this bill. Every bill the Democrats put out has been blocked. There has yet to be a one time to where he's in an agreement. Whatever bill the Democrats put out, he's yet to be in agreement in. It's always, oh, that's too much spending. But yet you raise the debt ceiling 8 times under Trump's presidency. Yeah. You also gave trillions in tax breaks to millionaires or to rich people and corporations. But a $3.5 trillion tax bill, which again, it's not immediate. Which a lot of people hear this and go, "Oh, this is immediate." No, this is over the next 10 years. And at the same time, the bill is basically being paid for by corporations and by rich people. Why do you think they're trying so hard to kill this bill and say, well, it's just too much spending? Yes, because it's being paid by those that can afford it. And it goes over the span of 10 years. Not immediate, folks. But the way the Republicans tell it, oh, this is too much. Really? Because more spending was done under Trump's presidency that was greenlit by Republicans. And at the same time, when it comes to simple fact of the matter, Democrats are basically doing the one thing that really should have been done. Which again, all this infrastructure that was been ignored for several years. The reason why it has a $3.5 trillion price tag is because that infrastructure has been ignored that long. You've had roads, bridges, pipes, electrical, broadband infrastructures that have been ignored for so long that eventually, you have these road collapses and bridges having issues across the U.S. It's negligence. That's all it is. Now imagine the simple fact of the matter that this was keep on getting ignored. Could you imagine catastrophic issues across the U.S.? Bridges having issues, dams not working properly. I mean, I live in Tennessee. I already know in Kentucky there's a dam called the Wolf Dam. That Wolf Dam, if it ever breaks, Nashville's a swimming pool. That's the best way I could put that. And the Army Corps of Engineers has sat there and said that the Wolf Dam needs extensive repair. That was almost 5 years ago. It has yet to be repaired since. That alone tells you off the bat, our nation is in a woefully needed state of repair. But it's amazing to me that when Democrats try to do the right thing and trying to really focus on our infrastructure, this is the one thing Democrats get right. They do introduce bills that will focus on rebuilding the infrastructure. But yes, the reason for the price tag is not because of the fact that Democrats think that, have an open checkbook. It's not that. It's the fact that that's how long it took to get to that price tag. Now, had the infrastructure bill been in place 40 years ago, I'm sure the price would have been way lower. But now we're in 2021. We are now addressing problems that should have been addressed way back in the late 70s, early 80s at this point. It needs to get done. But unfortunately, just like the government shutdown that's pending to happen, you can't expect Republicans to help you out. You can't expect Republicans to help you out at all, especially when, again, you're talking about the infrastructure package that they didn't create.
Stakes negotiations at the White House and on the Hill tonight. At stake, President Biden's domestic agenda. 2 key infrastructure bills, a $1 trillion bipartisan bill, and a much larger one for non-traditional infrastructure, expanding childcare, early education, health care, and fighting climate change. Tonight, will the vote on the bipartisan bill be postponed again? What House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said when asked about that today, and news just coming in tonight, President Biden canceling a trip to keep negotiating. Here's Rachel Scott.
Tonight, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi refusing to say if she'll push back the vote on the bipartisan infrastructure bill for a second time.
Madam Speaker, will you still move forward with the vote on Thursday?
The $1 trillion package would rebuild the nation's roads and bridges. But progressives warn they'll vote no unless there's movement on the other, much larger infrastructure bill, too, with expanded child care, education, health care, and climate change.
So if there is no agreement on that larger economic package, you will vote no for the bipartisan package on Thursday.
I would vote no, and so would 50 others.
The president fighting to keep his economic agenda alive. Today, meeting with moderate Democratic Senators Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema.
They're really good, honest, straightforward negotiations.
Manchin still won't say how much he'd be willing to spend.
I think there's a lot of work needs to be done.
Democrats are also facing a string of critical deadlines. In less than 72 hours, the government is set to shut down. And today, the Treasury Secretary said the nation will default on its debt on October 18th if Congress does nothing.
Leader Schumer, so can you assure the American people that the nation will avoid a government shutdown?
We're doing everything we can to avoid a shutdown, and we should put something on the floor. We hope our Republican friends will join with us.
The developments come in hour by hour. Rachel Scott live back up on the Hill tonight.
So we shouldn't be surprised. It shouldn't. I mean, again, going back to Joe Manchin. Well, how much you think the government? How many do you think we should be spending? Well, well, I don't really have a number, but 3.5 is. And you should. And this is the part where I sit there and I say this, guys. How many other ways I can say it? The fact of the matter is, yes, both bills need to be passed, and Republicans are doing what they do best. They will sit there and realize, oh, the house is on fire. We're just going to let it burn. Or as Mitch McConnell tried to stand and say, well, let's just only introduce a bill that keeps continuation of government running. It's stall tactic. That's all it is. And again, you have the Republicans willing to gamble on people's livelihoods in order to get their point across. That tells you everything you want to know about Republicans. They're willing, this is a party that is willing to let the American people suffer because that's not who they serve. They never have. They've served rich people. They've served corporations. They serve businesses that continue to fill their coffers. That's all they serve. So they have no problem sitting there watching the house burn and doing nothing but blocking Democratic bills. Been doing it since Obama's been elected. Actually been doing it since Clinton's been elected. And well beyond that. The thing is, it never ceased to amaze me how Joe Manchin and now Sinema are now in the middle of it. They could do great things and honestly avoid this and fix it all. Join the party side and avoid literally a headache, but they won't. And the thing about it is, in this day and age, a government shutdown should not happen in the middle of a pandemic. That's the big thing. A government shutdown should not happen when you still have high COVID cases. You still have to coordinate things. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't, also just to clarify, government shutdown does not mean that the pandemic services will not stop. They will continue. The thing about it is, it just becomes more difficult. Keep in mind, COVID cases are still high. ICU capacities are redlining across the U.S., and on a story that we're about to get to very soon, the situation's only going to get worse because of, well, people just, how can I put this in so many words? You get individuals who are supposed nurses, and again, we are about to be in the middle of a pandemic. We are in the middle of a pandemic. We're trying to avoid government shutdown. You have Democrats and Republicans. Some Democrats might as well be Republicans in the way they're acting moving toward progressive movement. And only to find out that this story it's amazing to me that when it comes to the vaccine, it is just the level, not just of people. I expect ordinary people to be against the vaccine. I expect people to sit there and go, well, I'm going to do my own research. Okay, I didn't know you were a qualified physician, but go for it. Oh, well, I just don't trust the doctors. Well, who are you going to trust? Miss Cleo? I'm curious. And then you have those that sit and say, I'm just going to see what happens. Every time, I'm not surprised. Those are the people I expect to be in the hospital later. And I'll go on record on saying this, those who are against the vaccine 9 times out of 10 are the same ones in the hospital with COVID. And again, you have families sitting there saying, the families of those loved ones, oh, I'm going to take I think everybody should take the vaccine. Why? Because it's real for you now. You didn't think so in the beginning, but once you got it, it became real for you. And then everything that you were told to do is now coming back to you, flooding back to you, when all you had to do was listen. And you failed to do that. I expect that from people like that who would rather rebel and think they're doing something cool or think they're doing something American when really you're doing something stupid. However, unfortunately, I don't expect this kind of attitude from nurses.
Push is going to come to shove, and they will say you must be vaccinated or you will not have a job.
I will not be vaccinated.
Healthcare workers Donna Schmidt and Stephanie Touche are refusing the COVID-19 vaccine no matter what.
Do either of you have a job today?
Currently, I am employed.
And do you have a job?
I do have a job. I'm actually out on medical leave for a surgical procedure I had, but...
Both expect they won't have a job for long. Both don't trust the vaccine and its possible side effects. Both have requested religious exemptions.
What religion are you?
Catholic.
Catholic. And even though the Pope got vaccinated and says vaccines are fine and we should be getting them, that doesn't
I feel he's a hypocrite. My whole life...
This is God's messenger on earth. This is the Bishop of Rome.
He is. He was elected to that position. However, he's not abiding by the Bible.
Both say they'd gladly test for COVID on a weekly basis instead of getting the vaccine. That's not enough for the state of New York.
You need to be assured that the person taking care of you is not going to give COVID to you or your newborn.
Donna Schmidt works in a neonatal ICU.
Do you worry about giving something, COVID or anything else even, to a child that's in your care?
No, because we're all required to wear and use PPE. We're trained professionals. We know how to use it properly.
Both believe COVID-19 is real, but don't believe the statistics when it comes to reporting COVID deaths and whether the vaccine is effective.
The number of people who are hospitalized and die that are vaccinated is extremely low compared to those who are dying by the thousands every week of COVID-19.
That's a misconception. Mm-hmm. And
I've seen them myself. I've
know...
talked to them myself. Thousands of people are dying from COVID-19 every week in this country.
Here's the thing. There's several hundreds of thousands of people that were put on hospice 5 months before COVID came. They had brain tumors, they had lung cancer, they had COPD, they had other illnesses, and yet on their actual death certificate, they deemed it that it was per COVID.
You can't even accept that the vaccines work?
No, I'm not convinced that they work yet.
You neither?
No, because there's so much suppressed science out there globally.
Both women who got COVID-19 feel betrayed. A year ago, people cheered them. Today, they feel their options for a livelihood are being ripped away.
So what's next for you two?
And that's the number one thing that frustrates me the most, is that we were all together. We were all united. And then all of a sudden, these mandates come out, and then they're fearful of losing their jobs, and they're being told, oh, this is safe, and you're in the wrong. I believe the fabric of our civilized, free society is truly at a precipice. And when I lay my head down, not only at night, but at the end of my life, if I'm given a moment, I want to know, and I want my descendants to know, that I did everything that I could, and that I fought for what we believe in, for what I know to be true and right. And if that costs me everything, so be it.
The funny part is, if you keep that up, it will cost you everything. Folks, these are... I find it very disturbing. Those are nurses. Nurses. I expect that from QAnon people. I expect that from those who believe whatever they believe is right, true believers, those types of folks, Trump-esque people, there's nothing you can tell them. I mean, you can have all the evidence in the world. That's the reason why we have science. The beautiful thing about science is that it's true whether you believe it or not. The thing is, it's that type of thinking that not only is scary, it's frightening. And again, this comes back again. This is that story is based on the fact that New York governor, she has decided to induce a mandate where it pretty much says you need to be vaccinated if you work in hospitals. If you work in hospitals, you need to be vaccinated. If not, you don't have a job. And I sat there and said this. I've been saying this since the FDA approvals came down, because everybody thought, well, it's not FDA approved. It is. One of the 3 vaccines is FDA approved now, and that's all it takes. Why? Because the moment you get FDA approval, no company, no business, no organization is not liable. Keep in mind what I just said here. When it comes to FDA approval, that means that all liability for a business or a corporation goes out the window, which means that if you work in certain areas, like a hospital, for example, or if you're a federal government worker, as Biden said about a month ago, that he's implemented mandates. Because again, the reason why mandates happen is because people's freedoms are being protected. Keep in mind what I just said. The reason why mandates are still around is because they're protecting people's choices. I'll explain. Now imagine if you had a large population that was in a pandemic just like ours. There was a vaccine that came out. And said, hey, if we take this vaccine, we can virtually eliminate COVID if everybody's vaccinated, and then we'll be able to get on with the rest of our lives. Let's say the entire population takes it. COVID cases go down to virtually 0, and it's back to a normal sense of life. In a perfect world, yes. But let's just say that large population that, again, you have 1 or 2 that don't take the COVID vaccine. Or let's just say a third, maybe a half of that population doesn't take it. You have a continuing pandemic because now half of them have been vaccinated while the other half are not, but no one's forcing them. They're still being respected. So again, that is the thing the world, not only the U.S., but the world faces right now. Although there are some countries that are just pretty much saying either get vaccinated or you get shot on sight. I'm not saying we need to adopt that policy because nobody should be shot on sight for their choices. But at the same time, these are nurses who are sitting there saying, I'm not going to get the vaccine. Okay, cool. You don't have a job. Well, I just don't think, just last year we were united. Yes, and we still are. There is not a nurse. I say it all the time. I tell nurses, doctors, those that work in the hospitals, thank you for your service. You guys are really the real MVPs for now going on almost nearly 2 years. And I say it to every nurse and doctor I get a chance to. That being said, that's still going on. What a lot of people are mad about is that you can't have your cake and eat it too. Again, with these nurses saying, well, I'm just not going to get the vaccine. Cool. We don't want you in a situation where you can cause more issues. And that's the truth. For it to be a hospital, I definitely don't want nurses, or I don't want unvaccinated nurses around me, around other patients, around doctors, because why? The unvaccinated, you guys could possibly carry it. And the thing about it is, that's the thing that just amazes me so, that you guys carry it, and at the same time don't understand from a nurse actually, don't understand the gravity of that situation. But you're going to sit there and cry about, well, the science is, there's a lot of suppressed science out there. That sounds like QAnon. That sounds like tinfoil theory. Well, it's just even when the journalist says, he pulls out factual evidence, immediately dismissed. In a hospice, they had thousands upon thousands of people, and they had brain tumors and this thing, and they linked it up to COVID, and they saw the death certificate COVID. Where are you pulling this fact out of your ass? I asked this question. But again, I don't feel bad. I'm sorry. If you're one of those people that, if your job requires a vaccination and you don't get vaccinated, why are you surprised that you can't keep your job anymore? I have been saying this now for about 4 or 5 podcasts. If your freedom to not get vaccinated was really challenged, there will be people at your door like the Gestapo making sure you got vaccinated, forcing you against your will. This is not forcing you against your will. This is people sitting there saying, "Oh, you don't want to get vaccinated? Okay." I've been saying it 5 or 6 times, people. The world will move on without you. Just like life will move on regardless of your choices. The world will move on regardless of who you are. The world has realized the world will not do what you want, do what you do. If you don't want to get the vaccine, fine. But the world's going to move forward. Businesses are going to have vaccine requirements. Probably outdoor shopping and restauranting may or may not require vaccines or masks. May require vaccinations. You must be vaccinated or you can't enter here. You can't eat here. Or you can't work here. You can't work out here. But you can't get mad. You can't get mad if your choice was, you honestly cannot get mad if your choice was to not get vaccinated. Because everybody still respects you. You just might have you might have a higher degree of difficulty trying to maintain a life. You might have a hard time, getting food, going out to eat, going to do fun things. You might have a slightly difficult problem with that. But your rights are still intact. But you're also unemployed. Even so, to add addition to that story, this is what I thought was crazy. Happened in North Carolina. 175 staffers were fired for not getting vaccinated. And this is in North Carolina. Nearly 200 workers were fired for failing to get vaccinated after they were told. They were literally and figuratively told, get vaccinated, lose your job. There are people out there who sat there and said, you know what, we're just going to go ahead and quit. But it's not the same ones. Police officers, there's different jobs across the board that it happened to. Law enforcement officers, some educators. And I keep saying this all the time. Is for the science to be there. Because you can find anything you want about vaccinations. I mean, you can go to Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson. You can go to your doctor and ask them about the vaccine. The vaccine is still free. There's still shots. Like I said, my hometown of Tennessee, my home state of Tennessee, shots are still being lined up. You can get a shot at Walmart. You can get a vaccine shot at Walmart. Come on now. It's not like it's difficult to get a vaccine to the point to where we have so much of it that we're giving it out overseas. That we're giving other countries who are running into COVID situations, we are sending our supplies over to them. This alone should say everything. But you're going to complain that your rights are being violated. No, your rights are not being violated. Your rights are being respected. It's the fact that your way of life is going to change. And again, that is one of those things that should be accepted because that's the consequences of your choice. But speaking of consequences, guys, like I said, with the whole issue with COVID-19 and things of that nature, you might find out that your grocery shelves and mostly your Targets and Starbucks and things of that nature might be looking a little empty. Here's why.
Been reporting here on the dozens of cargo ships waiting off both coasts. Tonight, the warning about what's to come and what we're seeing in stores already. And the advice we heard for shoppers going into the holiday season. It got our attention today. Here's ABC's Kaylee Hartung.
Tonight, empty shelves lining more stores nationwide. Some retailers complaining product shortages are becoming as bad as they were at the start of the pandemic. Costco once again limiting purchases of toilet paper and paper towels. From Nike to Apple, American businesses feeling the pinch. The Delta variant hitting Asian economies hard, meaning fewer goods are being produced.
I'd get going right away. I mean, if you want something under the Christmas tree, the proverbial tree, you might want to start shopping now because it's going to take some time to get it delivered.
COVID-19 disruptions causing a lack of workers at every part of the supply chain. Fewer dock workers and truckers means record bottlenecks of cargo ships off both coasts.
Whether you're waiting on that couch you ordered to get delivered or maybe trying to get ahead of your holiday shopping, those goods, might be stuck right here. Between the Port of Los Angeles and here in the Port of Long Beach, nearly 100 ships are out here just waiting for a place to dock.
Dozens more stuck waiting off the ports in New York and New Jersey. With demand remaining strong, major retailers like Walmart and Target are even chartering their own ships in order to stock their shelves.
David, there's such a bottleneck of ships in Southern California that they don't expect operations to get back to normal until at least early next year. David.
Yeah, we'll be watching this in the months to come, Kaylee.
And that's right. That's exactly right, folks. That a lot of our stock, a lot of people don't believe that, we went from an exporting country to an importing country. A lot of our goods are imported. Why? Labor is cheaper overseas. Labor, manufacturer, cost of production is cheaper overseas. Hence why a lot of retailers get their stuff from overseas. But unfortunately, due to COVID issues and other regulations, you have a whole bunch of ships in almost every major U.S. port, similar to Philadelphia, similar to New Jersey, New York, and Los Angeles, down even in Texas. For the simple fact of the matter is, they're unable to get their cargo off. Why? Because of COVID. Again, notice how I went back and sat there and said that everything seems to be aligned with each other. That's exactly right. And of course, it's only going to get worse as we are approaching, I know, we haven't even got to October yet, but we are approaching the holiday season. And at the same time, people like to shop early, people like to get things. Now, again, this does not mean, above all else, this does not mean to do what we did earlier this year. Please, let's not go back to the paper towel and toilet paper pandemic. Let's not do that. This is not a time to panic. This is not a time to do any of the sort. It's just like with the gas stations. Don't go running to the gas stations. There's not a point. There's not a point to do that because there's not a panic. You know how you cause a panic? Because some people are going to say, oh, well, buy all the toilet paper you can. Why? So you can stock up? I don't see the point. Well, I need to go ahead and get gas now. If you have a full tank, you're fine. Again, we are not pushing these stories to cause panic. We are pushing these stories to basically preach calm, relax. Hate to go Aaron Rodgers with it, but relax. This is not a time to go panicking. This is not a time to go running. Yes, COVID has caused a lot of things, but actually this should actually shine a light on us. We are an importing country. That didn't used to be the case almost nearly 40 years ago. 40, 50 years ago, we were an exporting company. Now we're an importing company. A lot of our goods, almost 8% of our goods that you usually see, come from overseas. Why are we not addressing that? Because that's something, for us to be the country that we are, why are we not addressing the fact that most of our stuff that we use on a daily basis comes overseas? And what are we trying to do to combat that? Because again, it's always amazing when you hear Republicans, and I'll put Republicans on the spot every time, the champions of small business, which is definitely a lie, but at the same time, corporations who get tax breaks because most of their stuff is done overseas. And even though they try to give incentives for having things built here, usually goes overseas, goes to Mexico, goes to Canada, they save money and increase profits. But no one's asking the question of why can't we, all the stuff that's being created, why can it not be created here and be pushed more here? That's the question I would ask. But again, that's for another day. But moving right along, guys, just two more stories before we get to our feel good segment. And this one is a little bit of a doozy because again, this is the New York AG who is basically under fire. Was praised for going after Andrew Cuomo, but now is back in the hot seat regarding the ruling on the Daniel Prude case.
General Letitia James also facing criticism today. It's for how she handled an investigation into the killing of Daniel Prude. Prude died in March of last year, 1 week after being held down by Rochester police during a mental health episode. The AG's office did not convince a grand jury to charge those officers. However, after the AG's office led a thorough investigation into Governor Cuomo, critics are questioning whether that office was equally diligent in this case. Let's bring in NBC News national reporter Janelle Griffith now. Janelle, Attorney General James was praised for the Cuomo investigation after we learned the details of the report there. What are critics saying about how that compares to the Prude investigation?
So attorneys for Daniel Prude's family and other legal experts have publicly questioned whether prosecutors did everything they could to secure indictment against the police officers who restrained him that morning in March. And one of the family attorneys who I spoke to told me, quote, "What the investigation into Andrew Cuomo shows is that when her office wants to put resources towards conducting a thorough investigation, they know how to do that." What critics and the attorneys for the Prude family have taken particular exception to is one expert that had testified before the grand jury, a doctor from San Diego, who testified that the police officers did not act inappropriately when they restrained Daniel Prude. And the critics and the Prude family attorneys have questioned why, if her goal was to get justice for Daniel Prude, why would she present this expert? They feel like she did so, or her office did so, to exonerate the police officers and get the end result that we reached, which was that none of the officers were indicted.
And Janelle, as we're hearing this criticism, has the Prude family weighed in anymore at this point?
They have not weighed in recently, other than through their attorneys that I spoke to, but they just feel like Ms. James's office failed them and failed the public.
And what about the Attorney General's office? What's been their response in terms of how they investigated this case and the fact that charges were not filed against the officers?
Ms. James has defended her office's handling of the investigation and what they presented to the grand jury. She has said, quote, they presented the strongest case possible. And she also, to her credit, she did disclose the grand jury proceedings. Typically, that's secret, and she petitioned a judge to make those proceedings public. And after the grand jury chose not to indict any of the officers, she also introduced legislation that she said would make it easier to prosecute police officers who are accused of using excessive force or unnecessary force, because that was part of the issue here, was an argument of whether the use of force was justified or not.
So let's call it what it is. For all those who remember about Daniel Prude, he was the man that was having an episode, had left his brother's house, had shed his clothes. The officers did find him naked and decided to put what they called a spit mask, a spit hood over his head, because apparently they said that he was spitting at the officers. Of course, he is butt naked with a hood over his head, died from asphyxia. Again, I can sit there and, like I said, this kind of goes back to Daniel Cameron when it comes back to that case of what happened in Kentucky to that poor woman. It's a little hard to believe, and I'm not saying Letitia Wright. I'm not saying Letitia Wright is not protecting cops, but I have sat there and said the whole entire time, when it comes to prosecutors control the jury, control the evidence, control all aspects of the case. Almost every litigation and lawyer has always sat there and said, if you want the conviction, you can get it. If you don't want the conviction, you can make sure that you don't get it. It's hard to sit there and say that she didn't do that. Her office didn't do everything. To me, it's an open and shut case. You can't explain how a person died under your care with a hood over their head and butt naked in the rain. It's hard to sit there and say that they don't have any type of responsibility for that man's death. It's hard to say that because the evidence would suggest it. And I can't think that a grand jury would look at this and go, oh no, the officers did everything right. It's hard to believe that everything was shown or everything was pushed. And I know for me that's saying, well, Will, you're pushing for a conviction. It should have been a conviction. How else can 4 officers with 1 black man not be held responsible for a black man's death? It happened under their watch. It happened under their professions. It happened under them. But again, it's like I'm really trying not to sit there and say when it comes to law enforcement has better protections against their actions than black people do. It just seems to be the case. And will that come back to haunt the AG probably during re-election? Yes, probably. Because again, it's like these officers will not be charged for the death of Daniel Prude. I mean, the family aside, it's just not going to work. Even more so that they sat there and said in the article that one of the police officers on video was seen putting him down could face departmental discipline. Departmental discipline. Because they sat there and said he was cited for unnecessary force and discourteous unprofessional conduct. So again, you can't get it. So let me get this straight. You're gonna sit there and tell me that you can't bring them up on charges for what they did, but one officer more than likely may see might be seeing departmental punishment. You can't make this up, folks. You can't. And again, I will keep saying this. This is the reason why I don't trust law enforcement. It's the reason why I don't trust them. Because, again, they are given a green light. They are given really a unsaid green light on minorities. Especially when there's more of them and the person who is accosted, the victim cannot speak for themselves. This is all too a recurring pattern. And this is the reason why law enforcement, it's the reason why a lot of people were really banking on that George Floyd Police Reform Act. If it wasn't for the raccoon Tim Scott and being the only black person in the Republican Senate who did nothing more than do his job of stalling, stonewalling, and not agreeing. Because police still have qualified immunity. Police can still go back and review things days after it's happened. Police can go back and give their statement days after it happens. But those who get arrested are not given the same type of time frame. They are questioned, they are interrogated, sometimes all on the same day. But police officers, let's give them a pass. Tell me I'm wrong. But the last story I got, guys, before we get to our feel-good segment is it could be considered a feel-good segment in itself, because I keep saying this is a sign of the times. California is doing something that a lot of states should be doing. Along with legalizing marijuana, they're taking the next step, which I hope will lead to great things.
In 2016, when voters in California decided that Prop 64 should pass, it wasn't just to legalize recreational marijuana for adults over 21. It was also to give anyone with a prior marijuana conviction the chance to get their record cleared. Today, Los Angeles County District Attorney George Gascon announced he is going to dismiss almost 60,000 more cannabis convictions, and that's not all.
We're doing something other than expungement. We're not only expunging the criminal records, but more importantly, we're sealing the record.
Sealing the record is what LA County Mother Ingrid Archie says helps people get a good paying job, housing, even the opportunity to go back to school after they've served time in prison for a marijuana conviction like she did more than 10 years ago.
When these convictions are taken off of our record, it minimizes so many more barriers, and it allows people the opportunity to actually reintegrate into society and do what's needed to not only take care of themselves, but also their family.
Ingrid explains she got fired from a great job because of her conviction and struggled for many years after that.
For the next 7 years, I was not able to obtain employment because of this conviction on my record. So it made it harder for me to take care of my kids.
This latest batch of eligible cases to be dismissed comes after 66,000 cases were already dismissed last year. And DA Gascon's office worked with local nonprofit, the Social Impact Center, to find them.
We welcome every victory that removes barriers for our communities. We recognize the ongoing work to ensure that the courts complete this process.
And honestly, that's great. I love that. Why? It needs to happen. I have been saying this. I don't smoke marijuana. I don't. I fully support those that do. I have been saying this for now going on, 3 years on this podcast. I have been now saying that marijuana has so many applications, not just the medicinal use. I said it before. It can help out in a majority of ways. We've known that it helps out with the cannabis oil itself. helps out with seizures, helps out with nerve pain. We do know it does help depression. It does help those with manic or bipolar or PTSD issues. We even know that the plant itself has biofuels can be made from it. Toilet paper can be made from it. Hemp itself, along with marijuana, is literally almost the next invention behind the invention of what you can do with a peanut. George Washington Carver taught us that. So again, with that being said, I think we're up to now 11 states that now have that now regulate marijuana, and now on top of that economic boom. Let's not even talk about the economic boom, because the states that have legalized, states or cities that have legalized recreational marijuana don't have a cash problem. Matter of fact, they actually have record cash coffins right now. But again, the other side of it is that we are not only expunging and throwing out marijuana convictions, we're giving these people a new lease on life. Because, as the lady said in the story, it is very hard to get anything good when you have a record or you have, anything or a conviction. It's a little difficult, beyond difficult, to turn around and be able to get a good job, much less go to school or anything of that nature. Because, again, marijuana, and I said before, marijuana is not a drug. It's like everybody says, "Oh, it's a drug." No, it's not. It really isn't. It's an archaic way of thinking that marijuana is a drug. Robert Williams said it best, God rest his soul, that he sat there and said, marijuana can do a lot of things, but it certainly doesn't make you effing empowered. It doesn't. I mean, there's nothing about it. Even Shakari Richardson, I take marijuana. I did smoke weed because I was dealing with mom's death. Okay. Doesn't make her empowered. Doesn't make her run any faster. I can tell you off the bat. But again, I love the fact of the matter that, yes, they are moving forward with expunging, as you heard in the story, they've actually started since last year about that. Okay, next step will be for those that are in prison. Those that are in prison on marijuana convictions should be released and their records expunged and sealed. It should happen. Why? Because we finally need to address the fact that when the war on drugs aside, as far as the war on drugs and the BS behind that, we need to address that marijuana should not put you in jail and ruin your life just because of the view of some people. I'm sorry, it shouldn't. And I'm glad that California is recognizing that and is definitely moving forward and getting those people out of there, especially nearly 60,000 convictions. That's great. But I'm thinking, like I said, I can live with that. I just wish other states would do that, because imagine what would happen. I said before, you really want to defeat something, legalize it. Word for alcohol and tobacco. But again, before we get to like I said, we're going to go and move on to our feel good segment, because usually on How the Frack we got here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom. Sometimes we lose our faith in humanity, but hey, it's the middle of the week, it's Wednesday, it's hump day, and we are all trying to get through it. So let's find something positive, something to make you smile or just make you chuckle. That's the whole idea of a feel good segment's about. And I love stories like this because I am a guy that plays lottery. We always have those dreams of winning, what we would do when we quit our jobs. I always said it best. I ain't quitting my job till I see all that in my bank accounts. Until I see the zeros in my bank account, I'm like, okay, because trust and believe, I'll be working. Like, don't get me wrong, if I win the lottery, I'll still be working. I'll just be working for myself. I won't be working for anybody else. I will be working for moi, because I got dreams. I got dreams I can remember. Anyway, I don't mean to start sounding like Sam Cooke. Don't mean to sound like Otis Redding. But again, let's get to the story. So, for all those that don't know, the Mega Millions, somebody in New York City is definitely $432 million richer last week, just because they did win the Mega Millions drawing. Of course, the odds of winning are 1 in 302 million, according to New York Lottery's website. Of course, like I said before, if you've ever played lottery before, you can either choose the lump sum or get your money now or receive cash payments over decades. I don't know about y'all, but the lump sum feels pretty good to me. Anyway, although also, if you are in New York, they do not allow you to remain anonymous. Although I have to give it to this group. They said back in 2019, a group of 23 people from Long Island anonymously collected funds for their $437 million ticket using an LLC. I never thought about that. Because, again, I live in Tennessee. Tennessee, if you win the lottery, it is not, you have to be reported. And I just thought about that. I mean, worse, it's almost like the guy with the Black Panther mask, because they said he had to be reported. They didn't say he had to show a face, which I give it to him for finding a Black Panther mask. And you guys remember that lottery. I hope you guys remember that picture. I wish I should actually brought this up before I finished it. But that was smart. But also, what else is smart? Exactly what they just said. It's like, wait a minute. They collected their winnings through an LLC? Oh, that sounds so cool. And smart. Very smart. Like I said before, if I ever win the lottery, trust me, here's a, you want to know how myself, you want to know if I ever won the lottery? I start doing this on a daily basis. When I start doing this on a daily basis instead of a weekly basis, you guys will know immediately Will is financially secure for a while. But yeah, hey, a person can dream, but you can't win. Can't win if you don't play. But with that being said, guys, that's going to do it for this midweek review of How the Frack We Got Here. I do thank you all for watching, for liking, for letting people know that this is uploaded, because this is pre-recorded, and definitely for your comments and things of that nature. Before I do get out of here, I do got to do some shameless plugging. I do got to talk about my buddy Big Vaughn. Vaughn at The Vaughn Westwood on Facebook, BigBZA on all socials, as he has a couple of podcasts going on. Smoking Trailer Sundays, every Sunday from 6:30 to 9 p.m. He shows movies and video game trailers you might find interesting. He also has the RAF, which is like America's Funniest Home Videos, except done by World Star, every Tuesday from 6:30 to 9 p.m. I'm actually going to go back and go watch it. I kind of missed yesterday, but I'm going back to go watch that today before I start my own job. But definitely, he also has a video game trailer, change on Making Plays, and definitely you can check that out. The Vaughn Westwood on Facebook and BigBZA on all socials. Also, shout out to Ari and G present Geek Salad as well. You can definitely find them on Facebook and YouTube by their name. And of course, as for yours truly, the link at the bottom, if you copy and paste that into your browser, will take you to my link tree for the podcast, my podcast page that has the Facebook and YouTube groups for all of them. How the Frack We Got Here, Get Bit, and Off Limits Podcast. My IG, BlackFox447. Definitely follow me there, because sometimes I post inspirational things and movie reviews and video game reviews, and sometimes gym stuff. I try to work out, and I do a couple push-ups. But with that being said, guys, like I said before, vaccination is key right now. I don't know where your mindset is or where you're on this. Vaccination is key. Please get vaccinated. Please wear a mask. The COVID cases are still high. I mean, even though we put our kids back in school, COVID cases are still high. Masks are needed to get us through this. Let's not be stupid. Let's be smart. Because it's not just us. Your decision affects many others now, and it's high time that a lot of people got on that train. So please, oh please, if you haven't been vaccinated, please get vaccinated. If you are vaccinated, please still keep wearing the mask and help us get these numbers down to where we can get back to some sense of a normal life. The last thing I'll say about How the Frack We Got Here is all about staying informed. We are not trying to change minds, persuade people. We are simply trying to do what the news stations of old try to do, which is basically give you all the facts and allow you to make up your own mind. We do a lot better as a society once we're informed. We actually move forward. We're progressive. We try to right the wrongs of our history by doing the things we should have done a long time ago, like elect our first Madam Vice President who is black. Still hoping for Michelle Obama in 2024. Michelle, we need you more than now than ever. But aside from that, guys, thank you all for watching. If you're watching this on the playback, please comment if it's live. I still want to know what you guys' opinion is on everything we talked about today. Aside from that, guys, take care of each other and yourself, and we will all get through this. Just like I got through the end of that intro, the end of that outro. Take care, guys. See you this Saturday. Peace.